I'm not sure why the title of The Singing Princess was changed to The Singing Princess from The Rose of Baghdad when it was released in America, but I have to say I much prefer the title The Rose of Baghdad. The original title is, of course, La Rosa di Baghdad. It is an Italian film, but it's actually Julie Andrews's first film. She actually dubbed the voice in English. And I have to say, I don't particularly like the film. It's not so much that it's a bad film, it's certainly a product of its time. I just didn't find the narrative to be that interesting, and I felt the animation quality was sometimes good, and sometimes a little bit choppy, a little rough around the edges, and I don't know if maybe different animators were working on it, or if the copy is just worn and a little thin over the years. I'm not sure. But I didn't think it was perfect. But given that it's, Julie Andrews' debut, if you like, it definitely has a special place in my heart for that reason. But had she not been in it and I'd started watching it, I might not have made it all the way to the end because I just didn't find the narrative that compelling. So this was released originally in 1949 under the title of the Rose of Baghdad, re-released English dubbed as The Singing Princess, directed by Anton, Gino, Domenighini. I've almost definitely mispronounced that, and I apologise for any other Italian names that I completely ruin. I love the description for this from IMDb. It's not very helpful, but it just says, an insane woman brings peace to her village by being the most ultimate singer around. It doesn't really help very much, does it? It was redubbed in 1952 for reference, and I don't think the dubbing loses any of the narrative. I'm not sure exactly how the translation worked or if they've changed anything, but if you do know, if you've perhaps seen the original in Italian, or if you know if anything was changed with regards to the narrative, please feel free to let me know. I'd be very interested to know if or what changes were made. To give you a better idea of the flavour that you can get, I'm going to read a brief description from Wikipedia. Usually I give my own descriptions of films, but sometimes if there's one that I think is just spot on from somewhere else, I will quote it. And this is the case with Wikipedia, which says, the story concerns a beautiful princess, a poor but honest hero, an evil sultan, and a slave of the lamp. It is a magical tale, an animated magical tale about Princess Zeila. And of course, we have these evil characters who are posing threats to the village. And it's worth pointing out that Princess Zeila is a teenager, which is a little bit awkward at times. I think Amin is a very lovely character. I really enjoyed Amin. I don't want to say too much about what you can expect from the narrative because I feel like it's one of those narratives where if I start telling you what happens, it's going to lose the element of surprise, because that's the only thing that kind of kept me engaged when watching it, because I wasn't that bothered about the actual characters' actions or how certain problems were going to resolve themselves, because I just didn't care. I found that the narrative did not speak to me at all. I found that the problems, when they happened, felt a little bit forced, and I felt like the resolutions were a bit far-fetched. But because it's kind of a magical animation, you can kind of let it get away with some of that. But sometimes I feel like it's just sloppy writing. But some of the characters are quite fantastical and visually quite interesting, even if they're not always well animated. So there were things about it that I thought worked well. But there were also many things that I thought just were a little scrappy, a little underdeveloped. As I said, sometimes not very well animated. Sometimes some of the characters would look a lot more rough around the edges than they did in previous scenes or in scenes afterwards. I'm not really sure why that is. As I said, I don't know if maybe just some of them were more rushed or if different animators were working on them, but definitely the quality of the animation teeters quite a lot. With regards to the narrative, yes, you have this beautiful princess who is a very appealing character. I think she's very much going to represent goodness and positivity, whereas you have this evil sultan character who's the antithesis, and the contrast between the two characters I think comes across very well. And I think with regards to Zayla's own story and how her character develops, I think that worked quite well. There wasn't anything specific about it that I thought didn't work, so that definitely works in its favour. With regards to the magical elements, yeah, obviously magic in animation is one of the greatest things about animation, because you can do literally whatever you want. And I think they really utilised this here. So if you don't like films where magic and the unrealistic happen, this definitely won't be one for you. But if that is something that you are drawn to, then I think it will appeal to you. There are attitudes that are definitely a product of its time, but I think as long as you're aware of that and you're not expecting something more contemporary, then you may enjoy it. Personally, I don't think I enjoyed it. I got to the end and thought, well, I like Julie Andrews, but there was nothing in that narrative that made me excited, that I particularly cared about. I found it fascinating because I was curious to see what it was like, but generally speaking, I wasn't that bothered. So I will not be watching it again, but I'm pleased to say that I've seen it, because it's really interesting to kind of see where Julie Andrews began, and obviously I love listening to her voice. She's got one of the most iconic voices, in my opinion, and I just love hearing her talk, let's be honest. So I think the decision to change it from the Rose of Baghdad to the Singing Princess, I'm not really sure why. Maybe it makes it sound more magical. Maybe removing the name Baghdad from the title would give it more universal appeal. I'm not really sure. I still feel like the Rose of Baghdad is a much more beautiful, appealing title, and definitely reflects Zeila, the princess, a lot more accurately than just the Singing Princess. She's so much more than that. The character I definitely liked. The narrative I didn't think was that great. The animation was sometimes good, sometimes a little rough. It's not a great film. Generally speaking, I'd only recommend it if you are particularly interested in this kind of film. But if you are a fan of Julie Andrews at all, then I would say check it out, because that aspect of it, at least was pretty nice.